ChatGPT and Spotify are still facing some issues following a major outage earlier. Thousands of people reported problems which have been linked to a network service provider called Cloudflare. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 123 points at 95.52. The pound buys $1.31 and €1.13. LBC weather, showers moving southwards through England and Wales tonight. Some sleet and snow over hills in the north, a low of -5 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. It's 6 p.m. Now, Tonight with Andrew Marr.
Good evening. In the middle of the passionate parliamentary debate yesterday about the draconian new asylum measures, there was a sudden moment of personal truth. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, under pressure about whether her measures would increase racial tension, replied like this.
Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a and told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country. And I do say to him, I wish it were possible to say that there isn't a problem here, that there's nothing to see and that it is all, in fact, just extremist right-wing talking points. But this system is broken and it is incumbent on all members of Parliament to acknowledge how badly broken the system is and to make it a moral mission to fix this system so that it stops creating the division that we all see.
She, not her left-wing critics, understood the danger Britain was in. Later on, speaking to my colleague LBC's political editor, Natasha Clark, she added this.
You spoke earlier in the Commons about racism. You spoke about being called yourself an effing P-word and told to go home. Can I ask you how that made you feel?
Well, it's horrible to be subject to racism. It's not new. There's a bit more of it around these days than there used to be, unfortunately. But what I'm reflecting is not just my personal experience, it's that of my family and many of my constituents.
Do you think it's getting worse?
I can only tell you what my own constituents tell me. I mean, as a constituency MP, I regularly hear from people in my own patch how worried they are about their safety and security in their own country and how they can see this issue of asylum and migration more broadly causing division in our communities. It's why, as a constituency member of Parliament, as somebody who's the child of migrants herself, immigration is woven into my family's story. It's a story of how we came to Britain. It's why it's so important to me and such a moral mission for me that we fix this broken system.
Now, this is a moment, I suggest, for us to step back a little. Britain has a Home Secretary, born in Birmingham of parents from Pakistan, Kashmir. She is bringing in the most draconian restrictions on asylum-seeking migrants we have ever had. And she's doing it because she thinks the current disorderly border is making Britain more racist, not less. Tonight, I want to assume, just for the sake of argument really, that these new measures work in terms of cutting the number of cross-channel migrants and taking a bit of the heat out of this debate. If that happens, where do we really stand when it comes to race relations, as they used to be called? There are plenty of people on the far right who use the word migrant when they really mean black or Asian. And yet polling shows that only a tiny fraction of the population regards black and Asian citizens born here as somehow less British than white British people. So it's confusing. Are today's white nationalists, perhaps pumped up by American social media, the equivalent of National Front marchers back in the 1970s? Has integration worked at all? Are we doomed to see one another as coming from different tribes? Or are we learning to live as people from different backgrounds on harmonious and friendly terms in the same damp, modestly sized green archipelago? And if we are to integrate better, how does our behaviour, and I include minority migrant communities, have to change? Well, I'm joined first tonight by Sir Trevor Phillips, the Sky television presenter, but before that, the head of the Commission for Racial Equality and chair of the London Assembly. Trevor, great to have you on the show. There was one sentence that Shabana Mahmood used in the Commons yesterday which really struck me, and I'm just going to read it back to you. I know that a country without secure borders is a less safe country for people who look like me. Do you agree with her?
Yes, and I think that people may misunderstand what is going on here. the reason people worry about safe borders is if the government cannot control the borders, they can't control anything. And if you are a member of a minority, one of the things that you absolutely need is to be sure that the state will protect you. Because if the state does not protect you, literally, and I'm not exaggerating here, you are dead, because the majority will always prevail. So when Shabana Mahmood says the government, the state must secure our borders, what she is actually saying is that the state must make sure that all its citizens are protected. And we, and I'm clear about this, we, the minorities, are the ones who are most likely and first likely to suffer from disorder, the breakdown of state control. So I think people need to sort of step back and get their heads out of the 1960s and 1970s and understand exactly what is going on here.
That's really interesting. So when her critics in the Commons say, Tommy Robinson has praised this,
for God's sake.
Nigel Farage has praised this, what do they get wrong?
Well, number one, it's guilt by association. Number two, what they're really interested in is an argument that's going on between white people. I mean, literally, I can't tell you how irritating it is for a person of colour to find themselves constantly being used as a sort of measure of white people's virtues. If you want to have an argument, go and have it, but don't use us as the argument. And so when she said, and I'm going to be completely honest here, I'm not partisan here, but my heart leapt when she said back to that sanctimonious MP who went on about, kumbaya, we're lovely, we're a wonderful country.
I think you're talking about Carla Denyer here of the Green Party.
It was, but there was a Liberal Democrat before that. They both said the same thing. Aren't we wonderful? Doesn't everybody love us, love ourselves, love everybody else in this multicultural society? And they're saying it to a woman who can say with, absolute certainty that she knows what a divided society feels like.
She feels it. She's been shouted at.
And the point is, all of these people, they can talk as much as they like. They can virtue signal as much as they like. But they do that from the position of somebody who never has to fear for their own safety or their children's safety because of what somebody else might think about them because of what they look like.
It strikes me this is a very, very important week for this Labour government in terms of survival and messaging, but you'd say it's a very important week for the country as well.
I think it's a profoundly important week for the country. People always tend to regard race relations as a sort of marginal thing, and they always talk about it as though it's all about whether, if I can be frank about it, white people like us or not. I'm here to say, don't really care. They don't really care. I have no qualm. I have no angst about somebody saying they do not like me because of my colour. That's fine. I don't have to have tea with them. I don't have to employ them. That's their loss. What is the problem that arises is one where people exercise their power over me because of that. And that's what I want any government, any authority to make sure does not happen. The wider point, I think, that we need to understand is that race relations, which is, I think, the way you cast it, Andrew, it's very different from where we were in the 1950s.
That's where I wanted to come to. I mean, I was asking really whether integration had, broadly speaking, worked a bit better since the 70s and 80s to now. And, when I came into the studio here, I was passing some school kids coming back from school, and there were sort of Chinese, Asian, black and white kids all horsing around together. And I thought, actually, for most people, integration does work. Not for everybody, but for most.
Well, that's London, but let me give you a straightforward fact in a way that I hope people will understand. This is the only country in the world, and I've spent a long time researching this, trying to see if I'm wrong about it, where there is a significant mixed race population, and we're talking now something getting on to 2 million individuals, which has come about since the war. The other big countries where that's true, United States, Brazil, South Africa. All of that came about during periods where it wasn't romance. It was coercion, slavery. This is the only place in the world where that has happened in my lifetime. And that tells you something about the nature of this country. We are different. When my father came here, 1950s, he walked the streets looking for somewhere to sleep and couldn't get anywhere. That doesn't happen today.
So we should be quite optimistic in many respects about what's happened, not too down. I want to ask you about something else, because I've been wandering around town since the sort of disaster that took place at the BBC. And, of course, the hardest job there is in British public life at the moment is probably Director General of the BBC, whoever does that next. And a name keeps coming up. And that's your name. And I just wonder what your feeling is about it.
Well, I think my name keeps coming up because people have watched W1A and they think it's time for a reality version, a reality TV version of W1A. Look, I am a great supporter of the BBC, but simply saying it's wonderful is not enough. I think that there is a problem at the corporation, and it is a very simple one. I think the corporation has forgotten that it is not an advocate. It is a scribe. Its job is to tell the country what is going on, what it is like, what it is feel like. Its job is not to tell the country what it should be like, what its citizens should think, and who and what is, if you like, offside, who or what is not permissible. And what I think people are missing on some of this argument is that it's not about just left versus right. It is often about the people at the corporation deciding what the public what is good for the public to know and what is not good for the public to know. We stopped doing that in the 1950s, and I think it's come back, but in the worst possible way.
I hear two things from that answer. First of all, that if you got the job, things would change quite radically. And second, that you haven't ruled yourself out, certainly yet. So, Trevor, thank you very much indeed for coming.
You're such a journalist, Andrew.
Now, I spoke a little before we came on air to Lord Simon Woolley, the founder of Operation Black Vote and the Commissioner for the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, himself born to a Windrush generation immigrant. Now, did he think that Shabana Mahmood's intervention had made things worse or better for people of colour in the UK?
Well, listening to the Home Secretary yesterday, when she talked about her own experiences of being on the sharp end of racism, my heart went out to her. I've had it myself, and I know many black and brown people in this country have been subject to it. And in fact, the levels of racism and Islamophobia, anti-Semitism have increased. So there is a problem within our society. I don't think that she's found the right solution, Andrew, I must add, because it seems to me at the moment there is a race to the bottom with this immigration toxic debate, if I may say so. And I think that in the end, this will end up being not about immigration and not about border control, but more fundamentally, who can be British and who, interestingly and sadly, belongs. Because once you take away those fundamental rights that say you belong and you can excel and be a good citizen here, then the game changes. It's no longer then, Andrew, about immigration, but about citizenship.
This is a really important point. Let me try and unpick it a little bit further. Is it your contention that when people are using the word migrant or illegal asylum seekers or whatever, that has become code for people of a different colour from me?
100%. Look, we've seen this from political parties, and the conservative minister talked about. There's a large number of people who came here legally who shouldn't have been afforded that legality, and they will have to go. And then she went on further, Andrew. She said that what we will be left with is cultural coherence. Now, I cannot tell you how dangerous that language is.
Well,
because
we're talking about Katie Lamb there, I think, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Look, many of us have been in the sharp end of the Windrush scandal. Our parents, that we were here legally, and then the goalposts changed. And we're in a similar debate with this. And we've seen it with when the Labour government, as a matter of fact, or I think it might have been the Conservative government, but when they changed the rules to remove the citizenship of Shamama Begum. And the result of that meant, Andrew, that many of us in the UK who have parents that were not born here are now second-class British citizens, which means that if we transgress the law, it's the government's right to take us to a country where we've never been before. And this is the next iteration of that, which is a very, very slippery slope. And so somebody being here for 15, 20 years, or even being born here right now with this toxic debate, Andrew, might feel, do I really belong?
Well, that's a profound thing to say. Can I just put it to you, Simon? You are Lord Woolley. You are the head of a Cambridge college. You are what most people would regard as a pillar of the establishment. Do you really now feel as a second-class citizen?
Well, it's not that if I feel, I am, as a matter of fact, because my mother was born in Barbados. And it means, unlike you, Andrew, if I may say, if your parents were born here, then you have greater citizenship rights than I do, a lord of the realm. That's a matter of fact, not how I feel. But I think the more fundamental point is we are no longer talking about immigration. We're talking about what type of country we are, who gets to belong and who doesn't. Now, the real debate ought to be around immigration. Why are people leaving certain countries, and what can we do to stop that flow? I would argue strongly, Andrew, that we need to be increasing aid. We need to be increasing stopping the pull factors from war and poverty, rather than cutting it. Right, but logic doesn't matter in this debate, because it's about the politicizing and the ensuring that we have a toxic debate that lands to people's emotions, Andrew.
Can I try and put in some sort of historical perspective here, Simon? Because what the Home Secretary said about the language that was used about her reminded me very much of the 1970s and the National Front marching in the street. It's a word associated with that period. And I was looking at some recent polling a few years ago now, I think, which said that a grand total of 7% of the population believed that black or brown people born in Britain were less British than white people, which seemed to me to be a big, big change in the culture and the beginnings of a successful multicultural society. Do you think the last couple of years have seen a dramatic reversal of that, or what?
I think probably since Brexit. I know there was multiple factors around Brexit, but xenophobia was one of them. And we've just slid down that slope. And the tragedy of the red herring about immigration is that actually we're not confronting those societal challenges around employment, around investment in northern areas, in certain southern areas, how we be more creative, how we be more productive. The reality, Andrew, is this. Think about this for a second, that we are a society like no other. Our richness is actually our teeming diversity that has links with the four corners of the globe. If instead we looked at our talent base and how we use that, rather than pitting poor white people against poor black people and having this toxic divide and rule, we could be a truly global beacon for a dynamic multicultural society. At the moment, it's the opposite.
So in your view, a sad week, a sad day?
Well, it's more than a sad day, because we've not finished yet. That for sure, those on the right, those on the extreme right, Andrew, will always go lower. And the toxification of British politics is at a level, Andrew, that I've never seen in my life. And bearing in mind, I'm a child of the 70s.
Lord Woolley, a very, very sobering conversation. Thank you so much for talking to LBC tonight. Coming up, the United Nations Security Council has signed off Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza, which still contains a potential sovereign state for Palestine. I'm going to be joined by an MP with personal connections to the region, but the time now, 6:21.
This is LBC.
Great to see you back at Specsavers. OK, could you read out the letters on the wall for me?
Yep. D-E-A-L-S? Yeah, D-E-A-L-S. Deals.
Oh, right. Our Black Friday deals are eye-catching, but the letter chart's over here.
Oh, sorry.
At Specsavers, we've got all sorts of unmissable Black Friday deals, like up to £50 off one pair of designer glasses. Offer ends on 7th of December 2025. Conditions apply. Ask in store for details.
Managing your business is a big task. To then stay on top of the numbers as well, you're only human. That's why the Intuit QuickBooks AI-powered platform supports your business growth as the #1 recommended cloud accounting software. Intuit QuickBooks. Based on a survey of 506 UK accounting professionals. Verify at quickbooks.co.uk/verify.
Have you ever wondered what a sandwich sounds like? Not much to it, is there? Unless, of course, it's a Walker's sandwich. That is good. Now that's what a sarnie should sound like. Go all crisp in with Walker's. Delicious.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £119 million. I think that deserves a whoop whoop. Whoop whoop! Thank you, faraway person. Get in tonight's Euro Millions draw. Play on app.
Estimated jackpot. Account terms, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
6:22. We are just 8 days away from the budget. Speculation is rife, and I have LBC's Aggie Chambre with me. Aggie, flapjacks, cheese straws, wine. Explain.
Plenty of wine, I'm told.
Plenty of wine.
So last night, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves gathered 30 of her favourite MPs in Number 11 for about 2 hours, made speeches about the budget in just 8 days' time. And apparently, I'm told by 2 Labour MPs who were there, she was in very good form, very good spirits, and hugging everyone. But it was what she said in her speech that was really, really interesting. And this, I should say, was first reported by Politico. And that was that basically she said, and I think we both heard this from other people too, that apparently it was always the plan to heavily, heavily trail the income tax increase. But then at the budget to say, no, we're not going to do it.
Last minute.
Yes,
guess what?
exactly. We've managed to turn the economic fortunes around, and instead of breaking the manifesto commitments, we're not going to do that. But instead, the pesky Financial Times got there first and revealed
it was leaked.
It was leaked. Now, of course, I feel I should say that is a convenient argument for them. There was also a huge amount of turmoil last week among the cabinet, Labour MPs, and plotting. So it may be the case they just felt they actually could not do it, as well as the better economic news. But also another thing she apparently told MPs was she very much wanted them to make the case to go out over the next 8 days and tell people that the increased tax burden will fall on the broadest shoulders. And apparently she didn't mention mansion tax by name, but everyone left with the understanding that was going to be in the document.
So how do we think this is going to work? This is people in houses worth more than 2 million or whatever it might be, however she sets it, who would have to pay an annual impost for living in an expensive house.
That's it. So basically, be it 1 million, 2 million, 1.5 million, or anything above that, then there would be a sort of potentially 0.5% surcharge on that per year that people would have to pay. There have been reports, there was a report over the weekend that this could be delayed until people move or until people pass away.
There is a problem of people with very low incomes, maybe retired people, who for historic reasons happen to find themselves in a house which is now quite valuable.
Exactly. And if they were to change it so that you don't have to pay that figure and it sort of mounts up over the years, that could work. It wouldn't raise the Treasury the amount of money very quickly in some cases that they want to have raised. But there are also reports that they could actually look at council tax bans too and double those so that the sort of higher echelons of council tax bans. But Labour MPs say to me, look, we think it's going to happen. We're not exactly sure what form it will take yet.
Really, really vivid. I almost imagine you having the cheese straws and a hug yourself. Aggie, thank you very much indeed. Now, the issue which divided British communities more than any other recently is Gaza. Earlier today, the United Nations Security Council voted by 13-0 with 2 abstentions in favour of Donald Trump's plan for a Gaza peace deal, which includes references to a possible future independent Palestinian state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is still vehemently against that, but America's Arab allies insisted. I'm joined now by Layla Moran, the Liberal Democrat MP and the first British MP of Palestinian descent. Layla, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, quite a moment for the UN to push this through or stamp this through.
It's a good thing. I mean, the plan, we needed something at that point. I went out to the region just a few weeks ago. People were talking about it as if it's a framework on which we can build. It's worth reiterating, it is not a plan, it's a framework, and it's not about peace. There is only one way to genuinely deliver peace, and that's a two-state solution, which it alludes to but doesn't sort of say in black and white. I think this resolution is a little bit of codification of that, but it's worth saying there were some key elements that were really stark in their omission. So one in particular, which is normally, and these things are very long, I mean, the resolution itself reads long, take it to bed with you tonight, it will help. But it misses all the old resolutions on which it builds, in particular the one that says any future state should be based on 1967 borders. That's not there. You don't talk usually about new resolutions without talking about old ones. And so there's a little bit of disappointment, I would say, among the people that I speak to. It's a little feeling like we've gone backwards rather than forwards from where the 20-point plan was.
And there is the sort of fundamental practical problem that Hamas is still in control of quite a lot of Gaza, and nobody seems to understand how or who will take that place over and provide security for people living there.
Absolutely. So there's references to that in the resolution. It talks about a trained-up Palestinian police force, which is very welcome. And I think something that I would just keep pushing is that, actually Palestinians are very capable, when given the resources, when given the proper freedom to do so, to run their own affairs. And one thing that seems to be missing a bit from that 20-point plan as a whole is real Palestinian agency over their future. Where there is this vacuum, where there is, not clear direction in terms of a two-state solution, leaves a vacuum for Hamas to continue to exist.
And so your
I want them
contention
out
would be that
as much as anything else.
There can't be a real peace until the Palestinians themselves are involved in the process more.
Palestinians, and if you look at history, and I think we have a lot to learn, particularly in this conflict, from history, where previous attempts at trying to get this resolved properly for peace have failed is when Palestinians weren't involved in the process. We see a peace board with Palestinians as part of some sort of adjunct, but not at the heart of it. My assertion to this government and others is if you want this to succeed where other peace plans have failed, have both Israelis and Palestinians driving from the front, not out there in the back.
Now, this is, of course, a Trump plan, and we've just had Trump with MBS, the ruler of Saudi Arabia, giving a press conference, and a rather strange thing happened there, which was a journalist raised the case of Jamal Khashoggi, who was, of course, murdered and cut into small pieces and removed by Saudi agents. And Trump sort of chastised the journalist, saying it was sort of impertinent and wrong to raise the question at all, said he knew nothing about it, which cannot be true. Yeah. I just wonder how you feel about the way he treated MBS.
Unbelievable words from Trump. I mean, again, another day, another crazy thing he said. But I think what we've got to understand, what he's trying to do there is he's there to strike a deal. And we spoke about Gaza. The big prize for Trump is to get Saudi Arabia to sign up to his Abraham Accords. These are the normalization trade accords that he already signed with a number of countries in the Gulf in particular, and he wants Saudi Arabia to do it. Saudi Arabia have been the ones, along with others like Egypt and Jordan and so on, to keep pushing Palestinian statehood and proper horizon for peace, regional stability in the plan. He wants them to sign his deal. And so it would be very inconvenient for him to then say something that would upset MBS. And that's my reading of that situation.
Really interesting. And he's also, of course, selling them the very latest generation of American fighter jets, which is, I think, something that worries Israel as well as other countries.
Absolutely. What happens next and who, we talk about a reconstruction plan for Gaza. It's not just about who decides what gets built where and how. It's also who's going to build it. Who's going to be given these multi-billion-dollar contracts. And it needs to be, if we want to actually have an economic boom in both Israel and Palestine, it needs to be local contractors doing it. There's a real concern out there that actually it's going to be all of Jared Kushner's friends, and it's going to end up benefiting them. In the end, who benefits from war? Well, people who want to make money.
Even more questions there than there are paragraphs in this very long resolution.
Sadly so.
Layla Moran, thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, the US Congress vote on the release of the Epstein files is imminent. And one of the journalists who investigated the billionaire for decades will be with me to discuss what's really at stake. Time now, 6:31, and Amelia Cox has your news headlines.
The Chinese embassy has hit back at claims Beijing is using headhunters on LinkedIn to spy on the UK by targeting MPs and peers. It says the allegations are pure fabrication and malicious slander. Victims of Jeffrey Epstein have called for Donald Trump to show some leadership over the release of the Epstein files. They've gathered on the steps of the Capitol building ahead of a vote on a bill to make them public. And protesters backing the banned group Palestine Action have been arrested in Nottingham, Northampton and Gloucester. Demonstrations have been held to object to laws that mean holding placards showing support for the organisation is a criminal offence. LBC weather, showers moving southwards through England and Wales tonight. Some sleet and snow over hills in the north, a low of -5 degrees.
This is LBC.
How's the business going? We're busier than ever, but struggling to get the staff we need. Recruiting can be such a distraction. We gave Job Centre Plus a try, and they've really helped us out. Really? Yeah, it was dead easy. We got our own employer advisor, Julie, who helped advertise our jobs, shortlisted candidates for us, and let us interview at the Job Centre. We've hired some great people, and Job Centre Plus really took the hassle out of it, and there was no fee.
Brilliant. That's straight on my to-do list.
Find out more at business.gov.uk/recruit. Eligibility criteria apply.
Great to see you back at Specsavers. OK, could you read out the letters on the wall for me?
Yep. D-E-A-L-S? Yeah, D-E-A-L-S. Deals.
Oh, right. Our Black Friday deals are eye-catching, but the letter chart's over here.
Oh, sorry.
At Specsavers, we've got all sorts of unmissable Black Friday deals, like up to £50 off one pair of designer glasses. Offer ends on 7th of December 2025. Conditions apply. Ask in store for details.
Train to Cambridge and then all aboard the paddleboards. A little bit different, should be fun. Or wobbly, or wet.
The wetsuit's a good look on you, Steve.
Oh, actually, this is very relaxed.
Georgie's up the River Cam without a paddle.
Train home, that was such a laugh. I think I might even have a new hobby. Download the Thameslink Railway app to book tickets and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story.
This is LBC. Message Andrew Marr on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
6:33. Now, around about now, the US Congress is starting to vote on whether to release all of the Epstein files. You'll remember that yesterday, President Donald Trump changed his position and stopped trying to persuade Republicans to block the information coming out. He also lambasted one of his former greatest supporters, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as a traitor for opposing him over Epstein. Earlier on today, she hit back.
These women have fought the most horrific fight that no woman should have to fight, and they did it by banding together and never giving up. And that's what we did by fighting so hard against the most powerful people in the world, even the President of the United States, in order to make this vote happen today. I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
Wow. Let's go now to Barry Levine, the investigative journalist and author of The Spider, an account of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal web. Barry, thanks for joining me. Everybody's got bated breath about these documents coming out, assuming that the Congress votes the way we assume. Do you think we're going to learn a lot more that we didn't know before?
Well, I think, first of all, this has to go from the House to the Senate, and then, of course, President Trump has to ink this thing before we actually can see these files. In fact, we could have seen these files this past summer, but his Justice Department held them up, and we've been battling over this since July. But I do think if we finally get to the files, it will help the victims heal. You know, they have been traumatized in this story, going back all the way to 2008 when Alexandra Acosta struck a deal, non-prosecution agreement deal with Jeffrey Epstein, gave him a slap on the wrist for solicitation of a minor and sent him to jail for less than a year. And in fact, at that time, the victims were supposed to be informed of that government decision, but they were not informed. So they have been lied to all along. And I think that if we finally open these files, it will help them deal with this trauma that they've suffered.
And in terms of dealing with the trauma, how important is it, do you think, that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as we call him now, comes over to Congress and gives evidence?
Well, listen, the FBI, I've been following this story for a very long time. The FBI has done everything they could to offer him an interview, and he has refused thus far. I frankly don't think he'll ever cross the ocean and come here for an interview. I think he's done talking about this. But he has suffered his own sentence. Well, it's not a criminal sentence that he suffered. He suffered at the hands of the people in England, and he's had his titles taken away by his brother. So, you know, I'm interested in getting down to the bottom of Representative Thomas Massey, who's been spearheading this release of these files, said recently that there's 20 men that he's aware of that were participants in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking. These are very influential and important individuals. They include 6 billionaires, one of them from Canada. They include people in finance, people in government, people in the American music industry. So I want to find out in those files what the FBI has done over the years to investigate these men and why, if in fact these men took part in sex trafficking, why aren't they not behind bars?
So you think, as a result of these files being released, assuming they are released, that we're going to see some very powerful, very well-known people in deep, deep public trouble?
Well, I think that's the case. Now, will we actually learn their identities? I don't know, because already House Speaker Johnson today is talking about redactions of informants and victims, and says there may be material in there that could even be related to the CIA or National Security Agency. But what we'll see are the depositions, even if there's redactions. We'll be able to see what victims told the FBI and law enforcement about these men. And we can also see what steps the FBI took in terms of apprehending these individuals. Did they put them under surveillance? Did they check their emails? Did they check their phone logs? Were they able to corroborate any of these victims' accounts?
And when it comes to Epstein himself, of course, he's long dead. Do you believe there are still people who worked very closely in making all of this happen? In other words, the operatives around him who will be worried about this coming out?
Oh, I do think so. And we know from Senator Ron Wyden, who went down the financial road and found that there had been more than $1 billion of wire transfers that Jeffrey Epstein sent, moved money through not only American banks, but through Russian banks to pay individuals around the world. I believe that there are fixers, there are quote unquote model fixers of an international variety who sent young girls on planes promising them modeling contracts, but instead they ended up on Jeffrey Epstein's island, his Lolita Island, where they were sexually abused. We need to find out who those men are, and we need to prosecute them.
My final question, Barry. Donald Trump, as we've just said, changed direction dramatically this week about whether or not these files should be released, and he now says his party and presumably himself, nothing to hide, nothing to see here. Do you think that's true? Do you think he's really not concerned, or is this just force majeure? He looks at the numbers ranged against him in Congress, thinks, I've got no hope of winning this, I might as well just be realistic about it.
Well, the reality is we don't fully know Donald Trump's involvement. We know that Pam Bondi, his attorney general, said that his name is in the FBI files. The emails that were released last week came from the Epstein estate, and there's some very peculiar emails related to President Trump in terms of his knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein. But we still don't know exactly what he saw, if he saw anything, what he knew about Jeffrey Epstein's conduct, and did he tell anybody? These are questions that I'm hoping that not only will we learn about him in the files, but also former President Clinton. There's a lot of questions that we still have to answer in this investigation.
The world will be watching. Barry Levine, thank you very much for talking to LBC. It is, of course, important to note that President Trump denies all the allegations in relation to Epstein and his crimes. Now, last night I was talking to the former Foreign Secretary David Miliband, and much of our conversation ranged over foreign affairs and migration and those sorts of subjects. But in the lecture he had given over the weekend, he made a point of breaking out to insist that one of the biggest political issues today was, in fact, the effect of smartphones on the brains of children and adolescents, so much so he wanted them banned.
I think that under 14, I think there's research about this, because you've obviously got issues to do with how kids can stay in touch with their parents if they're out and stuff.
Okay, but tell people why.
Because all of the evidence is that social engagement is going down, that danger is going up, that vulnerable kids are being preyed upon. And those are really serious.
Now, it's rare to get a politician or even a former politician being quite so blunt about this. Sophie Winkleman, the actress, has been campaigning to restrict mobile phones in schools for some time, so I asked for her reaction.
I'm very excited that a Liberal has come round to the concept of a ban, because I feel like a ban is actually an act of liberation. It's giving back children their sanity and their health and their ability to concentrate and their ability to work a bit and get some exam results and have good futures. And what I've seen around the country is that smartphones are damaging all of those things to such an extent that it's now a non-partisan issue. I think it has to be across the board. We all have to say we can't put children through this anymore.
Now, we have these various crises and hysterias from time to time, and we're told that we have exaggerated this threat or that threat. Perhaps in the case of so-called smartphones, we have underestimated the nature of the threat on children's brains.
I agree with this. And the author of The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt, says that we've overprotected children in the real world and underprotected them in the virtual world. And we can see all the signs. There's a mirror symmetry between teen malfunction and smartphone use. And it's destroying children's life chances, actually. It's destroying their ability to concentrate. They're seeing terrible things. Even if they're not seeing terrible things, they're seeing utterly pointless garbage for hours and hours. They're up all night. A lot of children are falling asleep at school. They're eating loads of rubbish to stay awake. They're not getting proper GCSEs. It's genuinely damaging their life chances.
And just on a personal level, I mean, I think I'm pretty good at concentrating. I read lots of long books. I go to plays. I listen to classical music, blah, blah, blah. But I find that I'm drawn into, for instance, Instagram and those tiny little addictive films the whole time. And if that happens to me at the age of 66, I wonder what's going on at the age of 16.
Well, precisely. And I think the damage to the ability to focus is as serious as children seeing very disgusting things online. Children can't even watch films anymore. They find them far too boring. So they can't be expected to read books. And it's very interesting, Andrew, when you speak to teenagers. There was a brilliant article in the Times about 18 months ago interviewing about 20 teenagers from all over Britain. And the question was, if we got rid of smartphones and social media for all of you, how would you feel? And every single one of them said, we'd have loved it, you idiots. You just bother doing it. And we're completely addicted. We know we're not doing the best we can because we can't focus. We've seen awful things. The teenagers think we're being pathetic.
Sophie Winkleman, I hope very, very much that people of whatever party are listening to this conversation and take note. Thank you very, very much for talking to me. And yet, as I think everybody understands, for politicians to actually take on big tech around this issue would be a massive issue in itself. So let's talk next to Bruce Daisley, who's the former European Vice President of Twitter and the former UK Managing Director of YouTube. Bruce, thanks very much indeed for coming on the show. It could be said that the use of smartphones, particularly around children and adolescence, is a kind of reckless social experiment at a huge scale that we've gone through without any proper safeguards or any proper discussion. Do you agree?
I'd be very inclined to dial down the catastrophization. I'm certainly no apologist for tech firms. I'm pretty convinced that tech firms need significant regulation. But, Sophie in the previous section said that phones were preventing young children from getting GCSEs. We've just seen the record GCSE results. The Jonathan Haidt book that she mentioned, the
Anxious Generation.
Anxious Generation, that's right. I think it's fair to say that it hasn't necessarily stood up to the rigours of scrutiny when people have plunged into it. I think some of the themes that he brings up are fair, but peer review has suggested that he's over-exaggerated some of the data points on it. Look, the truth is that we could say to ourselves, let's protect our young children. Let's remove them from any technology until the age of 16, till the age of 18. I'm not sure if that would be setting them up then to thrive in the world that would be awaiting for them when they come out. I think,
That's an
some
interesting point. Yeah.
Some degree of moderation, some degree of control seems to be right. I chat to a lot of school teachers. The UK, most schools don't permit children to use phones in classrooms, and they've got prohibitions on those things. And that seems like a good measure. But a lot of us, if we have children in our lives, children need to commute and make a journey home. And the idea that they wouldn't be able to use contemporary technology seems to be a touch onerous in its limitations. So look, I recognise some of the desires to maybe restrict the use of social media for young children, to reduce the access to adult content. All of these things seem reasonable. I think a total prohibition, I suspect, might be a stage too far.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that some controls are certainly necessary, and I'm interested in evidence so far that when age controls were put on porn sites, actually traffic to those sites has absolutely fallen off a cliff almost, suggesting that an awful lot of children and young people were using them and have been put off by the age controls, however relatively weak they may have been.
I wouldn't accept that that's what's happened there. I wouldn't accept that the average adult is willing to have their personal details in the porn files, waiting for someone to hack it one day. I wouldn't accept that the people not accessing those files were merely children. I don't think you'd get very far if you were trying to construe that as the interpretation of the data there.
Bruce, thank you very, very much indeed for so elegantly disagreeing with me. That's great to have you on the show. Now then, an economic storm could be on the horizon as Wall Street keeps a keen and anxious eye on the AI bubble. Could it be about to pop? More on that next, by the time now 6:49.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
With half of under-30s considering leaving the country and tens of thousands of millionaires actually doing it, are we risking a 1970s-style brain drain? And why are so many of us not getting married?
Ian Dale at 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or our new LBC app.
How's the business going?
We're busier than ever, but struggling to get the staff we need.
Recruiting can be such a distraction. We gave Job Centre Plus a try, and they've really helped us out.
Really?
Yeah, it was dead easy. We got our own employer advisor, Julie, who helped advertise our jobs, shortlisted candidates for us, and let us interview at the Job Centre. We've hired some great people, and Job Centre Plus really took the hassle out of it, and there was no fee.
Brilliant. That's straight on my to-do list.
Find out more at business.gov.uk/recruit. Eligibility criteria apply.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees, like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working, offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year. Mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can wind down and catch up. A chance to let conversations flow and plans unfold. And swap doom scrolling for telling stories. Too good for the group chat. Make the journey part of the joy and save 1/3 with off-peak group tickets at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
It's the last chance to get yourself a ticket for Wednesday's Lotto draw.
It could be you.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
6:51. Is there an AI bubble or a distended balloon in the world's stock markets? And is the air coming out of it quite fast? Because markets are seeing sharp falls. Bitcoin's lost its gains over the year, and there is a real fear the big US tech stocks, inflated by excessive AI optimism, are about to go phut. Now, if you're not interested or you're invested in AI, that doesn't really matter because a potential crash affects almost everybody, your pension, your savings, your business. Let's talk now to Michael Taylor, the UK trader and influencer and presenter of Shifting Shares. Michael, thanks very much for coming on the show. AI has been driving rises in the stock market now for about 2 years. It can't go on forever, can it?
Well, everyone says that until it pops. So 80% of the gains this year have come from AI stocks. And you were right, it does affect a lot of people. So because of the concentration now that we've got in the S&P 500, that makes up a large part of the investable global stock market, so at least 60%. Now, the average person, if they've got a pension and that AI bubble falls, the big seven, magnificent seven collapse, there will be a big reduction in people's pensions, and that makes them feel poorer, and so they spend less. And actually, the concentration in the US, we've got 10% of the highest earners in the US make up 50% of consumer spending. So if we see an AI bubble pop, you're going to have that 10% feel poor and spend less. Yeah. So, it definitely affects the everyday person.
It affects everybody, and let's hope it doesn't happen. But I guess the skepticism is around some of these vast multi-trillion-dollar deals you're seeing between AI companies, and people looking at them and saying, but for the time being, the actual earnings, the money those companies are making, in no way reflects the money they're spending.
Well, at the moment, if you think back to .com, there was a lot of companies that didn't actually have any earnings. So now they do have earnings. However, you were right, they are massively inflated. And the thing is, people are seeing AI as like a miracle worker. So it's going to increase in efficiency, drive corporate earnings because people are not going to be spending as much on company spending. But at some point, usually we see a hype and a big blow up, just like in .com. And I think AI is here to stay, but at some point it will have a collapse. Now, when that is, I don't actually know.
You come on to the when, and I want to ask you about tomorrow, because tomorrow NVIDIA, the great big GPU or chip-making company, really at the heart of a lot of this, reports its latest earnings figures. And I'm told that's a very, very important moment for people watching as to whether this bubble will burst or not.
It is. Now, the issue with this is because you have the official market expectations, and then you've got the unofficial expectations. Now, if a company says it beats its expectations, and it does that 5 or 6 times in a row, yes, it's beaten what's in the market, but everyone is expecting it to do even better. So there have been times where a company has beaten its market expectations and fallen because the weight of those expectations were just too high. So that could happen. That's why it's so difficult to predict.
So we're back to the famous animal spirits here. You give people advice all the time. What would be your general advice right now about investing in the markets?
So I'm not a regulated advisor. I'm just a trader of my own money. So everything is my own opinion only. Trading is hard. Most people fail and lose their money. But what I always say to people, if you want to get exposure, diversified exposure to the stock market in a low-risk manner, then a global ETF. And as I mentioned earlier, 60% of that is going to be US, just because the US has performed so well. But if there is an AI crash, you've got the rest of the world picking up the slack, so you're not fully concentrated
So
on the US.
going to a global fund or an investment trust or something like that. Yeah.
What I would do if I didn't manage my own money, exactly.
All right. Thank you very, very much indeed for that, and good luck trading tomorrow. Much appreciated. Now, one thing I always enjoy about this time of year is the arrival of the updated dictionaries and the words of the year some of us still haven't heard before. The Cambridge Dictionary for 2025 gives us parasocial, which sounds almost cuddly. What does it mean? Kite flying as a group activity, perhaps, or assistants handing round drinks at parties? No, not quite. Let's talk to Simone Schnall, the Professor of Experimental Social Psychology at Cambridge University. Simone, thanks for joining me. Parasocial, what does it mean?
It means that we experience on some level certain kinds of social relationships, pseudo relationships, I should say, with celebrities, influencers, people who are famous for whatever reason, where we're followers, even though we'll never meet them in real life.
So does this go beyond simply being a fanboy or a fangirl of some band?
Well, of course, fanboys and fangirls have always been around.
Exactly.
But nowadays, we just have so many more opportunities to find someone to follow, find someone to aspire to admire, and so on. So simply because of the time we spend on social media, for example, or on the internet, on our phones, we just are exposed to so much more information where someone can say that, oh, this is really amazing. I want to be like you.
So this could be obsession, obsessional interest and feeling affection for an influencer in any field, and presumably even for an influencer who turns out to be partly AI generated. All the stories are coming together tonight.
Yes, exactly. So it could have detrimental consequences if one, for example, take that person's advice, even though, let's say, somebody gives medical advice, even though they have no qualifications. So sometimes people will say, well, this and that follower has 1 million followers. A certain influencer has 1 million followers, as if that was a qualification in itself. So sometimes people follow certain types of advice that they shouldn't be following, where there was nothing, no expertise behind it whatsoever.
Yes, it's rather sad, rather than being a jolly word. You're a social psychologist, and as I say, every year we get these new words coming out. Do you find that they tell us something about where society is going? In other words, is this actually quite a useful discipline to leaf through the dictionaries and find the new words and discuss them?
Absolutely. This one, especially parasocial, it's so perfect for our times because it sometimes may be a word that people aren't quite familiar with yet, but once you describe it, it becomes very clear what it is. And these are the kind of experiences that many people are now having. And once you could put a label on it, it makes it much more tangible and easy to understand.
It's real stuff. Professor Simone Schnall, thank you very much indeed for talking to me. If you've missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion. You can put your news categories in the order you'd like them. You can pause, you can rewind live radio, and you can listen to a range of podcasts. So download the all-new official LBC app for free from your app store now. Right, coming up at 10 on LBC, it's Ben Kentish. But now it's time for Ian Dale.
Thanks, Andrew.
Most of the people I speak to